Hello, everyone. I'm Mariana Islam, and I am calling in from Nipmuc and Black Liberator lands in Massachusetts. And I serve as the Director of Programs and Advocacy at the Schott Foundation, where we resource the National Opportunity to Learn network of grassroots movement building organizations who are really leading and pioneering efforts for a just and equitable and liberatory education for all students. And in our 30-year history, we've been shifting the national conversation from this racialized hyper-focus on outcomes where we see blame and shame and criminalization of students and families and schools for not having what they require at really the most basic level of dignity. And we shift the focus to education justice and advocating for the types of supports, resources, and even processes needed to bring us closer to achieving education equity in the country. And when we have an opportunity to celebrate the achievements and lift up the brilliance within our network, we do. And today is one of those days with the long anticipated book release of Willful Defiance. And so on behalf of all of us at Schott, we are proud to support the People's Think Tank. And we say thank you to the amazing movement leaders, the Black and Brown parents, the young people, those on the call, those who are ancestors who we now call in from memory. Thank you. Thank you for launching this movement to end racist discipline and policing practices in schools. And thank you for believing in a future our babies belong to. May we honor your struggles and sacrifices and learn from your important legacies. And to our dear friend and colleague, Mark Warren, who has been a humble servant in this work, capturing these important contributions. Thank you and congratulations. And so tonight is the Education Justice Movement version of Pass the Mic. So I have the honor of passing the mic to our distinguished MC, Jonathan Stith, who's a founding member and national coordinator for the Alliance for Educational Justice. Jonathan, welcome.
All right, grabbing the mic. Thank you, and welcome to everybody who is joining us in the Zoom room. Again, Jonathan, he, him, National Director for Alliance for Educational Justice and part of the National Campaign for Police-Free Schools and part of the People's Think Tank. And I just want to also, my other steering committee members, if you could give a wave, a hi, so that people know that there's a team helping to hold this program, helping to build the People's Think Tank that has helped produce this book and will be helping to disseminate it. And Marion got us started off with just a beautiful acknowledgement. Do want to acknowledge that I'm coming from Washington, D.C., or the land of the Anacostia. And very similar for many of us, we have been on this trek, this journey towards education justice for many years. And along that path, we've had some comrades who started this journey with us who are no longer with us. And I just want to acknowledge those names as well. Top of my list is always George Carter III, whose vision of schools with mood detectors instead of metal detectors have been the impulse and the drive of the campaign for police-free schools. Allison Brown, our courageous lawyer, advocate and warrior over at Communities for Just Fair Schools Funds, who we lost. LaPortia Massey, the 13-year-old middle school student from Philadelphia who died from an asthma attack because there were no nurses in her schools. Also Raheem Brown, the young person out in Oakland, California, who was killed by a school SRO, who became the impetus for the Black organizing projects, organizing in their campaign to win police-free schools. Also, I want to acknowledge Johnny Latner, who was a education organizer with Journey for Justice out of New Jersey, who we also lost and whom we miss. And shout out to Journey for Justice, who's also doing some other incredible work at the same time. And last but not least, I want to recognize Mona Rodriguez, the most recent loss that we've had to police violence in our schools, who was an 18-year-old mom who was killed, leaving a fight, killed by a school resource officer in California. And so what we understand and what we know about this movement is that that although it is bringing us life, it has cost us, and those of us who have dedicated our lives to this struggle, we miss our comrades and those who've been beside us. And I know that there are so many of us also. So if there's a person whom you've been organizing with who is no longer with us, I invite you to share and drop that name in the chat. Or if there's a person whom you're grateful to whom you wouldn't be able to do this work without. We want us also to drop that in the chat. And I would want to lift up my fundi, Dietrich Edwards, who first brought me into education organizing many, many years ago back in DC. And so again, want to welcome all of y'all to our celebration of Willful Defiance, where we're going to be willful and defiant and have a good time in the face of some really perilous conditions that we find our schools reopening towards, and our young people facing, our communities facing. But as anything that the book has taught us is that we're resilient. We have the ability to fight back and to win. So with that, if you know anything about youth organizing, education, justice organizing, we all about the culture, using culture as a means to express our issues, as a means to vision the reality that we're trying to organize and create. And so with that, I'm excited to bring on, or to welcome, or to transition us to a spoken word performance.
They don't care if our babies thrive at school, long as they get by at school. Get by institutionalized racism and intergenerational oppression systems that keep prison pipelines thriving. Disguised as willful defiance, I'm trying to understand why urban schools have the highest rates of incarceration instead of culturally relevant curriculum that should be liberation. Suspensions from school feel like eternity. Strategically guide the black and brown kids out when we truly come to school to get free. Stifle academic and social emotional education. I'm just saying, could this be racially motivated? Outcomes being primarily black and brown youth become academically stagnated, leading to suspensions, expulsions, less school participation, stereotypes perpetuated. Is your school pedagogy, discipline, or human elevation? Discipline data from the Department of Education found that black girls are 5 times more likely than white girls to be suspended at least once from school. This data infuriating. When black girls are 7 times more likely to receive multiple out-of-school suspensions, where is the healing, motivation, and rebuilding? How do we stand in our confidence after it has been disciplined away? How do I come to school ready to learn when you are trying to strip my intelligence and make it seem like I am insane? Black girls are 3 times more likely to receive referrals to law enforcement when white girls are getting away with behaving the same way. And we already know what they are doing to black and brown boys. It's insane. Just check the data, it's been staying the same. I mean, steady increasing is definitely a shame. Do we want to teach black boys, or do we want to lead them away to trajectories that don't lead to school or higher education degrees? Schools act like they are paid to lead them to the police, when it's supposed to be a safe haven to keep youth off the streets. Expand opportunities, increase chances to succeed. Shouldn't school be focused on how to keep young people engaged and excited to be in their seats? Stop mistaking our pride for reasons for us to collide with suspensions, infractions, eventually leading to the police. We try to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. It's definitely time for us to get free. Who their students are and the environment they are living in. What students have to go through when they go home and live through before they can make it back to school again. Have you taken the time out to comprehend the life experiences of the children you are teaching and how your experience greatly differs from them? We have to remember school can empower or be a major hindrance. Is your school pushing towards prison or the most beautiful existence? The difference is we fighting for educational justice. Trust us, we won't stop until our babies get free. Educational liberation means we have to fight for what we believe. You can't suspend the truth out of our youth. You can't expel a generation that's meant to prevail. We demand an education where we can be more than our ancestors' wildest dreams. We want to go to school and truly be free.
Can somebody explain to me why? As soon as we enter the room, the teacher says bye-bye. We not getting paid enough. Why should I Care for kids that don't care for self. That's just one last brother we have to worry about getting well. Can somebody explain to me why young sisters is being suspended disproportionately, hand-bound and kicked out of school for throwing attention tantrums, sent out on Zoom for sending messages? Pipe down, little black girl, you're too domineering. Pushed out, harshly disciplined, over-criminalized, school not made for a black girl to shine. Can somebody explain to me why all my beautiful black and brown faces sitting in courtrooms over classrooms, juvenile offenders, minor underage, facing life rather than graduating? Something is wrong with this country's education. We losing our babies, perpetuating racism in a system that's not set up for us to win. And parents don't send their kids to school, we criminalize them. It's clear to me education is not for liberation, it's for disciplining. Can somebody explain to me why officer on campus arresting teens, placing minor in custody? It's a shame we live in a nation that doesn't invest in education. Can somebody explain to me why being black in school is a crime? My skin not willfully defiant, it's just a dirty trap to keep us trapped in the school to prison pipeline.
All right, make some noise in the chat. For that was Says Sacramento Area Youth Speaks, and that was Coco and Patrice, also part of the People's Think Tank Steering Committee, who came through with that fire, that energy. Yeah, you can't suspend the truth out of the youth. And again, if we understand like this, the story and the title, Willful Defiance, and what it was used to do to push Black and brown students and oppressed students out of school. And it was their willful defiance, their willingness to defy this authority, their willingness to fight for their education, their willingness to fight to make this punitive discipline, this prison for real, into a place of learning, into a site of transformation, and a laboratory for the liberation for the world that we try to create. And that comes through poetry in so many ways. And just so thankful and know the role that arts has played in my own organizing. Just want to shout out, say the name of Erika, who was one of my youth back in the day, who was a poet, who I helped recruit and bring into my organization, and was one of the best organizers I ever worked with. So as Ho Chi Minh says, poets can also know how to lead a campaign as well. With that, we're gonna move to our book endorsers, and who's gonna to share a few words and some congratulations for the book. And so first up is author Karen Mapp. Where's Karen at? We'll bring to the stage. Ooh, with a round of applause. There's Karen. All right, looking good with the sweater. I see you. All right.
Greetings, everyone, and good evening or good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I just want to express my gratitude for all of you being here tonight to celebrate this wonderful book. And I know we only have a couple of minutes because there's a lot of people who want to say a lot of powerful things about what this book has done for them. I found that as I read through the book, I found myself feeling validated as a Black female educator in many, many, many ways. First of all, I found myself saying, oh, so I'm not crazy. I think a lot of people who read these books, this book, who read the powerful voices that Mark has been able to capture, I'm sure many of you, particularly our parents out there who've been fighting so hard for their children, say the same thing. So I am not crazy. I am not crazy when my children get rolled up on by teachers and police and others in a way that is just so horrifying. I'm not crazy when I try to tell people what's happening to me and my children and they tell me I'm crazy. I'm not crazy when I find out that there are a lot of other families around me who are going through the same thing. And as educators and researchers, Mark and I've had the pleasure and the honor of being able to work with Mark, sometimes he and I have to look at each other and say, no, we're not crazy, because what we thought was happening really is happening. So I feel like this book is about validation of voice. It's about a celebration of who we are as a people, our resilience. But it's also a call to action, because now that we all know, I think we all really knew deep down inside, but those voices tell us that we're not telling the truth. Now that we see the truth written so eloquently in this book and others, it's time for us to act. And so Mark, I have to thank you so much. As I said, I'm so honored to be your colleague and friend. I know how hard it is to do this work. I saw on the introduction, you said how, listening to these stories is painful. But one of the things that this book does that so many books and other mediums have done is capture these voices to make sure people don't ever forget. So again, thank you so much for this work. And thank you all for being here. And it's time. I know we're all busy, but we're going to have to get busier to try to make sure that we make this world a better place for ourselves and for our children and our families and our communities. So thank you so much, Mark.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mapp. I want to make sure I get that right and acknowledge Black women and all their brilliance. Thank you for those words. I think we had next up Pedro. Has Pedro arrived?
He's here.
All right, there he is. All right. You're gonna win when you walk into a meeting and Pedro's there. So absolutely, go ahead and offer your words of endorsements. Welcome.
So I'm so happy I caught the end of my good friend Karen Mapp's comments because they reflect my own. And I too want to thank Mark for this important work and timely because more and more people are waking up and finally seeing the injustices that have been perpetuated in our schools in the name of discipline. I'm one of those who's been writing about this for many years, about this school to prison pipeline. What this book does is show how that pipeline works. Who are the ushers on the pipeline, ushering our children off into prisons, and why it's been seen as acceptable and even normal for this to occur. Just this past week, I was on a call with a mother who was distraught because her first grader, a student with learning disabilities, had been suspended for acting out in the classroom. And she was trying to figure out what she could do and spent a lot of time with her trying to talk it through and strategize. But, this is a systemic problem. And unfortunately, we often treat it as an individual problem and don't see the patterns. And the patterns are clear. It's about race, it's about class, it's about the way institutions criminalize and punish the most vulnerable children. And Mark's book helps to illuminate what's going on and remind us that schools have to not only be safe, they have to be just places. They have to be places where children experience and witness fairness. And for too long, schools have not served that purpose, especially for Black children and vulnerable children generally. So I want to lend my voice of applause and recognition to what Mark has accomplished with this book. And thank you for including me in this webinar. I'm sorry, I almost missed it. I'm on the West Coast, and it's difficult sometimes to align yourself to the East Coast activities, even though I am originally a New Yorker. So.
All right. You can take a New Yorker out of New York, but thank you for those words. Next up is researcher extraordinaire, Russ Skiwa. Russ, where you at?
Right here.
All right.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And thank you so much, Mark, for this really powerful piece of work. I joined Pedro in the old days. And you notice I didn't say the good old days at all. I was around somewhere in the early 2000s, maybe 2002. I happened to be at a conference, and I was standing next to the leader of a policy think tank in Washington, and he turned to me and he said something about having read my work, and I was all set to say, "Oh, thank you," but he said, if you think you can stop schools from suspending kids, you're just spitting in the wind. Well, he didn't actually use the word spitting, but you get the idea. But, you know, at the time, that's what a lot of people thought. They didn't thankfully express it that way, but, you know, that this was just the way things were, de rigueur. This is, this is what we have to do to save schools from these violent predators that were running around. And what we know now is there weren't any violent predators. It was zero tolerance and school suspensions and the disproportionate effects that has had on our Black and brown students then and since then. Those things are the reality, not the fear that was created to increase zero tolerance. And the folks who led us to this shift in the way we viewed the world and have enabled us to change the landscape of discipline in the schools are those folks who work tirelessly on the ground throughout the country to make a change and to shine a light on the abuses of zero tolerance and school suspensions. And Mark's work is just a heroic work in documenting that. It's a nice waypoint to celebrate how far we've come. Unfortunately, we have got a ways to go, and we need to stand up to those who would push back this progress and make it impossible not only to achieve justice in our schools, but to even talk about social justice in our schools, but also to stand up and really urge on those who perceive themselves to be our allies, and nudge them to speak out more firmly and really support the efforts here of all of the groups that have brought us so far. So thank you all, and thanks very much, Mark.
Russ. All right, and then our last endorser is Dolores Welta. Are you there? Here, present? Uh-oh, I heard some noises. No. All right, I don't think he was able to make it. Oh no. I would try to fill the space, but I don't know what you speak to that organizing giant. I was excited to hear what she was going to say and offer, but I do want to move us along. And if she joins us, we'll try to circle back. And as you've been hearing the stories, share in the chat when and where, as Paula Giddens, the Black feminist author and researcher, asks us, when and where do you enter the movement to dismantle the school to prison pipeline? Share your first time when you maybe first heard the term, or maybe your first experience when you're like, I'm not crazy, as we heard from Dr. Mapp and in so many other of our endorsers. So again, I want to thank all of our endorsers for the words of support and encouragement, and most important, to take action together to continue the movement to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. And to take us into our book reading is none other than People's Think Tank coordinator, Kayfiana. Kayfiana.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good evening, community. My name is Kayfiana Kabati, and I'm the national coordinator of the People's Think Tank. In the spirit of the movement and the book, we wanted to do something a bit different from a traditional book reading. I'll be passing the mic to some of the organizers and leaders featured in the book to share passages that demonstrates how they have been willfully defiant in their communities. So without further ado, the first person I'm going to pass the mic to is Zakia Sankara Jabbar. Zakia is a national director of activism at Brightbeam, the parent organization of Education Post, and is the co-founder of Racial Justice Now. She served as the national field organizer for the Dignity in Schools campaign for several years, and she has used her organizing and advocacy acumen in communities all across the country, sharing tools, strategies, and skills with Black parents to shift education policy and practice. Here's Zakia.
All right, and can somebody remind me how much time I have?
You have about like 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay, cool. So just, if I go over, just gently nudge me and I'll stop. So good evening, everybody. It's good to see so many familiar faces. It's been a minute. I am starting on chapter 7, page 180, where it says the movement spreads, organizing in small city suburbs in the South. So it says in this chapter, we discuss examples of the development and spread of the movement to new localities and to new constituencies. We start in the Midwest in Dayton, Ohio, where we see how Black parents tackle the school to prison pipeline in a conservative area without a strong infrastructure of local support for community organizing. This case is of racial justice now in Dayton, illustrates how new small groups of parents and young people have outsized victories in part because of the strength and the support of the national movement. We then go to the South as well as to southern suburbs. The South has a particularly repressive and violent racial history rooted in enslavement and Jim Crow segregation, as well as a distinct social, political, and cultural features as first saw in chapter 4 in Mississippi. Examining racial inequities in education in the South is critically important because the majority of African Americans live in the South, and a full majority of public school students in the South live in or near poverty. We start in New Orleans and then travel to Gwinnett County, suburban Atlanta, ending in Henrico County and other suburban counties outside of Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the old Confederacy. Dayton, Ohio, Black parent organizing in a Midwestern city. In the introduction to this book, I tell the story of Zakiya Sankara Jabbar's journey to racial justice organizing. Sankara Jabbar's African-American son had been repeatedly suspended from preschool. When she did some research about Black boys in education and talked with other Black parents in Dayton, Sankara Jabbar learned that his experience was all too typical. She took the bold step to co-launch Racial Justice Now with Professor Vernelia Randall in 2011 as an unapologetically Black organization dedicated to organizing Black parents to dismantle the school to prison pipeline and educational racism. At the time, Dayton was not untypical of many small to medium-sized cities in the Midwest. Like many others, deindustrialization hit Dayton with a vengeance, and the loss of good-paying manufacturing jobs and the flight of more affluent white residents to the suburbs left Dayton largely poor. The highest concentrations of poverty lie in West Dayton, the heart of the Black community. In 2010, okay, let me just read this last sentence. So in 2010, Dayton Public Schools were almost 70% Black, with nearly 100% of the students considered poor or low income. Metro Dayton, also a fairly conservative area, as suggested by the largely Republican group of state legislators that represented the area.
Thank you so much, Zakiya. Next, we're going to Georgia to hear from Marilyn Tillman. Marilyn is a parent, community activist, and co-founder of Gwinnett Stop, a coalition formed to lead a parent-driven, community-centered partnership approach to dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline in Gwinnett County. Marilyn, the floor is yours.
First, I'm going to do a correction, and it doesn't count against my time. Marlene Tillman. So the passage I want to read is about the organization. I didn't know the page number, 240 something. The nascent group faced the challenge of what appeared to be an intransigent and entrenched administration and school board and a larger Southern cultural context that worked through relationships. According to Falk, it's a very Republican community and everyone has been on the school board forever. If you didn't have the relationships with power holders, and most of the newer people of color did not, then you didn't get access to resources. The culture also expected deference, which historically maintained deep racial inequities and was hostile to direct, determined, and assertive advocacy. Falk says, community organizing is a dirty word here. Standing up and marching is a dirty word. It's not something you do in polite society. for me, this passage puts our wins in perspective because it signifies the gains that we've made. So the community has organized to finally oust the entrenched superintendent of 25 years just earlier this year. He's out. We organized to elect school board members who hold our values. We now have 2 Black, 1 biracial, and 2 white school board members. That is much more reflective of our community than just 5 old white school board members. Although just this week, we had to fight to preserve our new power, the empowering piece of this is that the community is now understanding that when we fight, we win. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the correction. From Chicago, we have Maya Coleman representing Voices of Youth in Chicago Education. She's a 23-year-old proud young woman born and raised on the west side of Chicago. Maya comes from a long line of community organizers, starting with her grandmother, Gloria, who introduced her to organizing at the age of 9. Here she is.
So much. So I'm going to be reading from chapter 6, page 155. All the groups believed, however, that young people most directly impacted by educational inequity were in the best position to develop meaningful, long-lasting solutions. Jenny Awardi, co-director of Communities United, says that the research proved powerful, and we came to see it as a key youth development process that's the foundation of something long-term. And so I can definitely say that when Voice was created, there's a lot of community organizations that are out here that don't do work that is actually youth-led. So to have young people from our community come out and say, this is an issue in my school and this is how I want to fix it. When this was actually developed, it was in 2007 and later pushed forward in 2014. So in 2007, I was still in middle school, as well as 2014, I was graduating and becoming a freshman in high school. And before I became a freshman, I saw a lot of these things kind of take place already within the school system. I saw young people really get more involved within our community organization because all of this things that were in the school system was changing. Like young people were getting suspended for lesser days. The minimum was like 2 to 3 days and maximum was 5. But before, they were getting suspended for 10 days and out of school for long periods of time. And so to see that change happen and actually meet the young people that were a part of this change, I wanted to do that same work. And so right now, today, I sit in front of you reading this and being a proud member of Voice and continuously doing the work of those young people and continuing those legacies and changing systems to come and also changing those systems for the generations to come. And so even with mentioning that, the work is still not done and we still have lots more work to do. But that right there is how you create a powerful movement of young people. So thank you all for honoring us in this book. It is a pleasure to be here and thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you, Maya. That's powerful. Thank you for your voice. Finally, let's hear from Maisie Chin, the Executive Director and co-founder of Cadre, Community Asset Development Redefining Education, a community-based partnership membership organization in South Los Angeles, led by African-American and Latino parents. Cadre has changed school discipline policy in Los Angeles and the state of California, and is a founding member of the Dignity in Schools campaign. Maisie?
Well, thank you, everybody. It is very surreal to be here. And today I have the honor and privilege of reading a passage from the LA chapter 5. And what I hope to do is to also just bring other people into the room that who may or may not be here from Cadre and Strategy Center and Youth Justice Coalition, or YJC. So Chapter 5, towards the end. Local organizing in Los Angeles has had an impact far beyond the city's perimeter. In many ways, the work of organizing groups in LA has been nationalized and has had a significant impact on the movement to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. Cadre's victory for SWPBS in 2007 inspired organizing across the country and became a key impetus for the formation of the Dignity in Schools campaign. Its deep work with parents and advocacy influenced DSC's decision to prioritize leadership by groups working with people most impacted in DSC and the coalition's deeply democratic decision-making culture. The Strategy Center was one of the early groups to address the role of the police in the school to prison pipeline. Its truancy ticketing victory and campaign to end the 1033 military equipment program helped move the national movement toward a call for police-free schools. Meanwhile, YJC's focus on police, courts, and the juvenile system and its response to mass shootings have worked to connect the largely school-oriented movement to the law enforcement and criminalization system. Its transformative justice program has been a model for groups looking for restorative approaches that lead to systemic change. In the end, the LA movement shows that dismantling the school to prison pipeline takes policy change in schools and policing systems that results in lower rates of exclusionary discipline and police ticketing and arrests. Policy change is not enough though. The culture of public education has to shift to respect Black and Brown parents and students and to recognize and value community power, parent power, and student power. Culture change comes through deep organizing with people most impacted by injustice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maisie. Thank you to everyone who read from the book. I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan to take us away.
All right, now I get to take us to a quick interlude before we get into our panel, our powerful panel of movement leaders and makers. And so I think there's a slide that I'm supposed to get to talk about what we want you to do, which is buy the book. And right now we're able to offer it for 30% off. That's right. I did not make a mistake. 30% off. Absolutely. I know. Run out and get a copy for everybody. Be like Oprah. You get a copy. You get a copy. You get a copy. You get a copy. And there's probably a bunch of school administrators and others folks who need to get a copy too, so they'll know what's coming at their neck in 2022. And so again, we want to invite folks to go to the People's Think Tank website, peoplesthinktank.us/Willful Defiance/order. I believe what do they punch in into the thing to get the 30% off? I didn't get that clue. How do they do that?
There's a discount code.
What's the discount code?
It's on the order page.
Oh, it's on the order
Somebody
page.
just put it in the chat, I think.
Oh, somebody put it in the chat. That's right. Hook us up with that. Absolutely. So again, we want to encourage folks to buy the book. If you're a foundation, buy a copy for every one of the organizations that are part of your network, right? If you are a professor, use it in your class. If you're an organization, how do you get a book into every hand of one of your members to really help, again, ground the history? You can hear the rich tapestry of organizing that has gone into building the school to prison pipeline, from youth organizing to parent organizers to community, have all chipped in and have been a contribution to building this movement and have been learning from one another, as Macy kind of laid out, right? The work that was done in LA helped nationalize the struggle. And as we've seen all over the country, local fights can lead to big national movements. I see people scrambling around, getting their things, ordering stuff. Joe, look like you ordering a book. Absolutely, get those books ordered. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of my favorite organizers on the planet. I know there's a lot of organizers on the planet, and I know a lot of y'all are my favorites, and this is one of my favorites. Just always a joy, such power. And if you know her, you love her too. So bring it up to the Zoom stage, People's Think Tank Steering Committee member, Letha Muhammad.
Hey, that was a great introduction, Jonathan. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and happy to be here and be able to assist in this program and help facilitate this powerful conversation I know we're about to have with these wonderful women. So I'll do a quick introduction of our panelists, and then I'll transition over to Mark for him to share some comments, and then we'll kick the panel off. So first up in my introductions is Miss Ellen Reedy, who's the Executive Director of Nolly Jenkins Family Center in Durant, Mississippi. And along with Helen Johnson, she was one of the very first to name and challenge the school to prison pipeline all the way back in the late 1990s. She helped launch the Prevention of Schoolhouse to Jailhouse campaign, which was spread across the Mississippi Delta and was an original participant in the Dignity in Schools campaign. Secondly, we have Elsa Benuelos, who is a first generation working class Chicana and the daughter of immigrants, who's been committed to improving the lives of her community over the last 22 years. As a high school student, she organized for equity and justice and was involved in campaigns to improve the conditions at her high school, which was West High School in Denver, Colorado. And in the fall of 2013, Elsa joined Padres, oh, help me, y'all, I always struggle.
Unidos.
Yes, thank you, Elsa. As a youth organizer, and she helped lead youth and parent-led campaigns, as well as building the internal infrastructure of the organization ever since. And then in November of 2019, Elsa became the first solo executive director of PJU, a significant milestone for the organization. Elsa's visionary next generation leadership is causing a reemergence of PJU as a leader in the social justice movement. And we all know they had an amazing win last year with the removal of school resource officers. So looking forward to hearing your comments tonight as well, Elsa. Next, I have Judith Brown Dianis, who's the executive director of the Advancement Project National Office in Washington, D.C. And for those of us who are, doing the work to dismantle the school to prison pipeline, we know that the Advancement Project is who we have in our back pocket to help win that fight. She was the co-sponsor of the very first national conference on zero tolerance school discipline and wrote some of the first reports to challenge it. She has led and overseen the Advancement Project Schoolhouse to Jailhouse project, supporting local campaigns, lobbying federal officials in Washington, D.C., and leading communications and engagement efforts with educational associations, most recently supporting the Police Free Schools movement. So welcome tonight, Judith. And last but definitely not least, we have Luz Marina Serrano, who is the lead organizer for the Two Spirit Initiative and the National Alliance work of the Genders and Sexualities Alliance, or GSA network. She is a first generation Colombian Peruvian Latina born and raised in Queens, New York, and has organized to support migrant farm workers in rural Maine and LGBTQ2S youth in New Mexico. Luz Marina joined GSA Network in July 2018, where she brings together partners around the country to foster connection and uplift LGBTQ plus youth and voices and lead its most recent Two Spirit initiative. So join me in welcoming these powerhouses to our panel for tonight. And in just a moment, we will have the opportunity to hear from them. I'm going to transition over to Mark and let him share a few words with us, and then we'll be right back with our panelists. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Letha. Before we start the panel, or as a way to start the panel, I'm going to take a few minutes to share some of the key highlights from the book. This is not a book about dead history. This is a book about a living movement, and we're hoping to learn from the history of the movement to inform the struggles that we're going to be hearing about from the panel. So first of all, I just want to thank all of my partners who helped create this book: community organizers, parents and students of color, and their allies across the country. Especially, I want to give a shout out to the Dignity in Schools campaign and the Alliance for Educational Justice, and our own People's Think Tank for Educational Justice as really key partners in this work, as well as local organizing groups across the country like Voice and Cadre. They put their trust in me, a white male college professor, to tell the collective story of this movement to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. I don't take that for granted. I take that as an awesome responsibility. I also want to thank Roberta Udo, my partner in life and in the movement for educational justice. She's taught me so much about powerful forms of teaching and learning, caring for children and their families, and fighting for justice. And I'm glad that she's here to share this event with me tonight. I may be a professor, but I'm one committed to doing rigorous research and deep partnership with communities organized for change, to give them a meaningful stay in the research that I do and to hold my work accountable to them. I am the author of this book, but I hope you can tell from this event that this is both a scholarly book and also a resource that is owned by the movement. Let me take a few moments to sketch out at least a few of the key points in the book. First, the absolute central importance of building a movement with the people most impacted at its center, students of color and their parents and families. Their voices and stories fill this book, so many of which we've heard tonight. And as Alita has just pointed out, the people who first named and challenged the school to prison pipeline were not scholars. They were not the traditional civil rights advocates in Washington. They were people like Ellen Reddy, who's here tonight, and her sister Helen in places like Holmes County in the Mississippi Delta in the heart of the American slave system. And they were the first to launch some of the first campaigns for the prevention of schoolhouse to jailhouse. Secondly, the vital role of community organizing that is youth-led and parent-led to challenge systems of punishment and criminalization. We saw the power of mass protests last year, but few people really understand that in the places where police were actually removed from schools or defunded, like Denver with Padres and Elsa's here tonight, or the Black Organizing Project in Oakland, these are places that organizing groups have been working on this issue for 10 years. And they were able to build on the movement, but they were able to also build on the leadership development, political education, and lobbying efforts that happened over a number of years. The third key point is that this kind of organizing must be grounded locally, but it has to be connected up nationally to create the resources and power to win at the local level. Our opponents are very powerful, and local organizing groups do not have the resources on their own. But the question is, how do we build a movement, a national movement that's not dominated by professional advocates in Washington, but centered instead in local organizing, closely connected to people most impacted by injustice? And I went to learn from the school to prison pipeline movement how to do that. And I spent a lot of time documenting, particularly the Dignity in Schools campaign, policies and practices and struggles to create a national organization that really works to strengthen, support, lift up local struggles and provide resources to them. We have Judith here today, also from Advancement Project, another national organization that has tried to play that role as well. Fourth, this is a complex movement. It grew as an intergenerational and intersectional movement. The assertion of the voices of trans and queer people, a role played by the Genders and Sexuality Alliance Network. We have Luz Marina here with us today on the panel, and other groups played a role in that process. The assertion of the voice and intersectional issues of Black girls, girls of color, gender nonconforming students. But how do you build a movement that avoids competition amongst these groups, that is inclusive of all, and takes a more both-and approach, where the assertion of the experiences of Black girls does not diminish the criminalization and the focus of the criminalization on Black boys? And finally, the book tries to document the creation of authentic alternatives that move schools away from punishment and control and the criminalization of students. And we've already heard a bit about the Youth Justice Coalition's work to create transformative justice alternatives. But again, how do we avoid school districts simply hiring outside consultants to run restorative justice programs that are imposed down on teachers who have no authentic buy-in or are thought of as a way to fix students rather than transform the culture of teaching and learning and relationships at the school? And spend a lot of time in the book trying to look at authentic and deep organizing processes at schools where teachers ally with parents and students to transform their school cultures. These are amazing successes that are documented in the book, but the struggle continues. With the pandemic, we see that how deeply broken our system of public education is, how rooted it is in white supremacy, and how it works to reproduce the racial and economic order. And I deeply hope and intend for this book and the movement it represents to contribute to a transformative process where the dismantling the school to prison pipeline is an entry point to the wholesale transformation of schools towards racial equity and educational justice, where education can serve as a force for the liberation of people. And I call on and I challenge everyone on this call and all members of our community in this country to join the struggle, both to dismantle the school to prison pipeline and to fight for educational justice. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. We have such deep admiration and appreciation for you. You know, you always roll up in the space, just this nice, humble person, right? Who, you know, is doing some powerful work to lift up our stories. And so we have to make sure we let you know how much we appreciate you and the work that you've done to tell the story of the work that so many of us are doing in our communities and have been doing for so long. And so we're going to get into our panel discussion now. And like I mentioned earlier when I read our brief bios, you know, we have some powerhouses here who have, in my opinion, have lots of experience on this issue, right? And so there are a couple of questions that we'll tackle, and we're also going to drop the questions in the chat and invite our audience to also answer in the chat. And, you know, I'll try to flesh out some of those answers to share out loud. So I'm going to start with Miss Ellen. You know, I got taught from a way back, right, to respect my elders. And so I'm gonna do what my mom and daddy taught me. So I'm gonna start with you, Miss Ellen, and ask you what stories and/or successes from the book or from your work in general would you like to lift up and celebrate? Because we think it's important to always acknowledge and celebrate the wins that we have.
Good evening. You know, here more and more, I'm taking this elderhood seriously here. Y'all gonna spoil me. I just want to acknowledge, first of all, before I respond to your question, I want to bring the memory of Helen Johnson into this work. Chapter 4 is dedicated to Mississippi, and it was Helen's passion and anger that really started this movement in Holmes County. I vividly remember that video where she goes from the prison to the school, from the prison to the school, and she was passionate about our young people. And so I just want to bring her voice as well as the other folk that helped with our work. I had planned to show a collage of our work over the years, but it doesn't look like I have access to share. But I guess what really stuck out for me in this chapter is it's challenging to accept and appreciate that the work started here in Holmes County, because we were just, you know, working for our children. We saw children out on the street during the day, and it was our passion. You know, I come from a large family, and the young people always remind me, I always got somebody else's children with me. And so it was just that passion for our children and knowing the potential that they have, and the anger that it caused when they told me they were going to training schools and couldn't get back in the schools because they had been stigmatized. We had been doing work in Holmes County for a long time, and we were running up against, you know, males in position of power, white folk in position of power. And I can remember kind of taking this position. Yeah, I'm a woman, but I can stand as strong as you all stand in terms of the men inside this work. And I can remember our superintendent bringing a iron rod into the school board room, and we didn't let that deter us. We would go to school board meetings, and the rooms were small, and we would pull our seat up behind the school board members, and we would be turning their pages and flipping their pages, and they realized they're not going to go away. As a matter of fact, our superintendent called me, Helen, a peon, and called me a little peon. But we never stopped that fight. We would bring, you know, families into the room, and we would make the school board nervous. And eventually they built us a larger school board room to meet in. But it was really the love for our children and knowing that if we didn't do something, you know, who else would do it?
You gave me chills. I appreciate those stories. Judith, come on, let us know. I know you got something to tell us.
Well, I mean, first of all, you know, I'm all tearing up over here because so much love for all of y'all, and for my people in Mississippi where it started. So I want to lift up all the family who has done this work for so long. It's been my passion. It's been a journey. And so many of you all, from Maisie to Pedro, I just want to lift all y'all up because it was a collective effort, and this has been truly a movement of many, and the young people. And I think, I mean, for me, just two quick things that kind of stand out for me is you know, like for us, the work got started in 1999 in Mississippi with Southern Echo. It then kind of morphed into like, and we kind of didn't have an analysis of what the heck it was. And so that's why I wrote our first report, Opportunity Suspended, in 1999, to try to understand what the hell is this thing that's happening. And I want to just lift up two things. One is that I remember a point in time where Advancement Project had done some focus groups, because it wasn't called the school to prison pipeline at some point, right? It was like zero tolerance. Then we were like schoolhouse to jailhouse. We were like, we don't know what this thing is. And we did some polling and we brought it back to movement. And the pollster said, don't use that terminology, school to prison pipeline, because it doesn't do well with teachers. They don't like it. Doesn't do well with principals. And I remember movement saying, the hell with that. We're using it because that's what it is. And I think about how things could have been so different had we just listened to the posters. So I want to bring that up. And then the last thing I want to bring up is action camps, because for us at Advancement Project, Action Camp has been a space for growing the movement deeper, being able to build the connective tissue, building up young people. That the energy that you see at Action Camp, where we have brought people together to learn from one another. This isn't just Advancement Project, but it's about the movement learning what is working, what are we doing, how are we building, has been a really powerful space. We started them 11 years ago. We have trained, I don't know, over 2,000 young people over time. And I just want to lift up all the young people who participated. I just want to say to everybody that it has been my greatest honor to be part of this work. Thank you.
All right, Judith, you got me tearing up too. Like, this is our heart work. This isn't, and that's the thing I think about the education justice movement. Like, this is our babies. I'm a mama, right? I'm a grandma now. This really has an impact that is deeply felt in our own homes. It's not something outside of our own experiences. So thank you for bringing your full human self, Judith, to this space, because I'm a crier and I think tears are important. Elsa, share with us some of your successes, either from the book or from your own work, please.
Yeah, this is a really good segue. I was going to say, so just for clarity, I started Padres in 2003. And it's really just crazy just to hear Judith. Like I came on, I was 20 years old. I was a youth organizer. And I think Padres had just initially probably like around that same time had went to that first conference, like figuring things out, right? And then we joined Florida, I think it was Chicago, right, to come up to develop the education on lockdown. So this whole book was like going down memory lane and just really just reminded me the power of like community organizing, right? And even as an organizer, someone who comes from, lower performing schools, I was suspended when I was in high school. It just reminded me of like that power, the power of organizing, the power of developing, young organizers and young people who have contributed to this, because we have made a lot of progress. And sometimes we feel like, oh my gosh, like, for example, we did win the Police Free Schools resolution last June, but the district has found loopholes now to get rid of SROs, police officers, and now hired their own personnel who can carry an armed weapon and can actually issue police tickets. But because we are on top of them and because of the power of organizing and because we know our stuff through networking with a lot of you all, like nationally, locally, getting support like from the Advancement Project and other like resources, like the district is really scared. Now they're just like, holy frick, like they already know our plan and they know that we screwed up and now they're just trying to like backpedal, right? We just had a really good like accountability meeting last week with the superintendent and his top staff, and they don't even know what to say. Now they're saying, we hire these personnel to deal with adults, not students. So now they're just coming up with excuses, which is really, really interesting. But yeah, I just wanted to, again, just uplift, like, the power of organizing, the power of young people. And I think someone said, like, it's, you know, as I'm getting older and closer now to my 40s, it's like, it's now my responsibility, right, to like train young people to carry this on, because it is a long-term fight. But again, we have something, and thank you, Mark, for the work that you've done, working with a lot of organizations like us, is like, that is one thing that we miss, and we're missing in a lot of our movements, right? Is like capturing that history to be able to say, we are making progress, we are making moves, and here's proof, right? And this is a really good tool to be able to show like our younger generation to continue that, right? Because the district's not going to care at my age now, right? Like what I'm having to say, I can say back in 2020, 20 years ago, but it's much more powerful when it comes from young people. And this is, again, a really good tool to be able to say, you're part of something much more bigger. So that was really, like, it was energetic and just really, it inspired me again. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that. The power of history, right? Like, I think of Sankofa, which means to go back and take, right? And so for us to have this opportunity to look at the history of our movement, to use this, to your point, Elsa, as a tool to help the young people that are unfortunately still suffering the same shit that we suffered when we were in school. And I've been out of school 20 plus years, and I can remember the school to prison pipeline operating in my school. And so the fact that Mark, in conjunction with so many of you organizers and community folks, has created this tool for us to look at our history so that we can learn some new lessons from that history, is powerful. Luz Marina, share with us your successes.
Thank you. I also want to take a moment. I'm just really kind of just like getting deep into what everybody's saying, because there's like, I just feel like we're building on what everybody's saying. And thank you so much for all your words. And mine is actually going to be a lot what Judith mentioned was the action camps. I think action camps for us specifically has been that place where we've been able to really bridge that conversation of trans and queer Black and brown folks and Indigenous folks, and bridging that, like, that gap, I think, that has like existed for a long time. And to be able to come to action camps, bring what we're doing on the ground in our GSA clubs, and what our young people are saying, has been that piece that like has really kind of been that missing link. Because so often, right, like we know that our young people, like we know Black and brown folks are going through this. It's not like we know this, but often that other identity of being trans, of being two-spirit, of being queer is left out of the conversation, right? Like it just gets ignored. And we know the numbers are high for our LGBTQ community. It is very high. And so that is, the action camps have been amazing, have been something that I know our young people have talked about over and over. We've loved presenting and being in community. And that feels like such a strong, like family almost. And I also just appreciate that, like, there's obviously that hardship, but then there's that beauty that comes from that hardship. So I want to uplift that. I also wanted to mention, Elsa, like back in the day when I was just doing work here also in New Mexico, we like followed you all. We were like, what is Padres doing? Like we were like kind of like secretly creeping on what you were all doing to like do it here, just so you know, we were doing that. So I've always just kind of been a fan, as somebody who's just been watching you all. And yeah, I'm just appreciative of being here in spaces. I also just want to think that like one of the things I also want to uplift about us specifically, I really believe that the way that we choose to do this work in an experiential, almost somatic way, all our clubs, that we do this work deeply in community, in that feeling of that work. And I just, I think that's really special that we're able to do that. Obviously the pandemic has put up that barrier, which I know we'll talk about probably later in some other way, but that is another way that we uplift and bring up our young folks.
So powerful reflections. And I would encourage you, if you're not reading the chat, to read the chat, because there's a lot of love flowing through the chat for all of us, and it's a beautiful thing. So we talked about our successes and the power of those successes. We also, have to talk about, the challenges. So that the last question I would ask you all for the night is, what challenges do you or the movement face today? And how can you or your organization, or we as the collective, address those challenges? And I'm dropping that in the chat as well for anybody to weigh in. I'm gonna call you out. Hey, Judith. I saw you sit up, so you caught my
All
eye.
right. Well, I was just fidgeting, but okay. No, I got myself together now. I can be articulate, as they say. So I think, I mean, the challenge, a couple of things. One is, you know, we've many of us in the movement have moved into this work around police-free schools, and that's what young people are calling for. And it is a beautiful thing. And this is a beautiful thing about movement, is movement gets to articulate the demands and to really underscore what it looks like and what it needs to be. And I think we're seeing wins. I think there are over 30 school districts where they may have either removed police from schools after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the uprisings of 2020. And young people moved into gear to say, yep, we want them out of our schools. And we saw those wins, but now we're also seeing the backlash. And schools are very quick, districts are very quick to be like, yeah, you won that. And now we're going back to what we wanted. And they didn't even try. They didn't even try to do something different. What they did was they responded to a moment, and then they said, the hell with that. We're going back to what we know, and that's police. And so I think that is, you know, we win, but we have to be vigilant. This is a journey, right? And so we know that the backlash comes swift and aggressive. And so we have to continue to keep our foot on the gas. And I think that we will continue to see more wins, but you know, and I'm sure Elsa can speak to this, you know, it's like we're like, yay, wait a second. And I also want to add to that, but that's also because people like police. And so we've got to be making sure that our movement is not so siloed, that it is not in relationship and in work and in love with the people who are doing defund and abolition work. Because we are, for those of us who do police-free schools, it is an abolitionist movement. And we've got to be connected to the greater picture of the work that people are doing. So that we can learn from each other and move together. And then we got to deal with the teachers' unions over and over and over again, because often it's the teachers' unions that are the ones who are standing up against us. And we've had some progress, but then we've had retreats there too. So we got to keep pushing them.
You better tell the truth, Judith. Elsa, come on in here now. Chime in.
Yeah, I mean, like, just to echo to that, I think that what the challenge is like the district, like they've really freaked out in terms of like us exposing like what they did in terms of, you know, they're saying it's Denver Public Schools, like personnel, they're not police. And we're like, yeah. So the district just put out the narrative that we're seeing now, right? That youth violence is increasing and that there's a need for SROs in our schools, which is a flip, which we're seeing a lot nationally, right? So that's a challenge for us because it is feeding into like that need of police, right? To feel safe. And then instance, like yesterday, there was a shooting, you know, in one of the like close cities, and an SRO happened to be nearby and saved some students. And now the narrative is like, you see, we need SROs. So, you know, our opposing forces are always finding ways to like, you know, feed into that narrative. So I think that what we need to do as a movement is start coming up with our collective like narrative, counter narrative, and start, you know, as much as we can to start, you know, kind of what Judith said, like, what is our vision and what do we need to start putting out there? So, you know, just even a side thing, like our organization, Padres, is really working on a strategic plan to like a comms plan to start trying to counterpose that, because the district just doesn't know what to do, because we keep exposing them and saying, yeah, but it doesn't make sense, you know? So that's all I have to add to that, but it's they're always finding, I think, like, we like, you know, you hear that saying, like we go like 2 steps forward, then we go back 5. But we're making progress. And I think that that's what we need. And this book, again, really inspired me that we have been making that, because there's always been those like pushbacks the whole entire way.
Yes, and we push through those pushbacks. I think that's an important thing to highlight. Luz Marino, talk to us about challenges the movement faces.
Again, I think we're like kind of saying them like this, we know what the challenges are, and thank you both for stating them. I also think that, which I touched on briefly, is just the fact that we've had a pandemic and we've been in this situation, which hasn't allowed, which has put up so many barriers around like, what does school look like? What does our education look like? And who has access to it, right? In this new formation. And I think that itself has been a barrier that we've been trying to figure out where are people, where are young folks? Like how can we support them to just be able to show up and maybe like eat a meal? Like we're not even like, we're like the stages of just like, are you okay? Are you okay to be who you are in the new setting? So I think that's been a big piece. I do want to uplift the fact that I know that's kind of, I go back and forth. See, this is how my brain is, but I do want to uplift the fact that our young people also helped create in conversation about the police-free schools, a police-free schools guide. Which is helping young folks, as you know, the young folks like know this is happening, right? Like they know they're leading the way, and sometimes giving support around like finding some language specifically, like, well, like how can I talk about this? How am I able to use the words that like this adult or school board member is going to be able to use? So we did develop that, which I think is a great tool for young people to use and be able to advocate for themselves too, when maybe they're not having supportive adults around. And another piece that also I think that has come out that's been in response to kind of everything, I will say, is our 9-point platform that was created by our Trans Youth Council. And I don't know where that lives. I don't know, it lives somewhere. I can definitely share it if we're gonna like share stuff with folks. But that, if you take a look at that, that has definitely got a lot of pushback. But one of the points calls for abolition, like pure abolition. And that has been a piece that like has been hard. So it's been like something where we're like, let's do this. And we've gotten a lot of pushback from it. But, you know, we're not backing down, as we all do. This is the work. We stay in it. We stay because we are willful and we know this is the way the work happens. But I will say that that is a piece that I think is in response. And the other like kind of last piece, I will say a challenge that I'm noticing, especially as I'm starting to engage in this Two-Spirit work, which is newish for GSA Network, is trying to engage our Two-Spirit or Indigenous queer relatives who live in really rural communities and have been actually doing online schooling prior to the pandemic. So like what that looks like and what the education system and the generational trauma from boarding schools is just so big. And I think that that is a piece that we're trying to like integrate into our work, because I do think it's a piece that's missing. And how are we bringing that conversation into this work specifically? Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Luz. That was a lot. And the chat is jumping, y'all. Again, if you're not reading the chat, you're missing out. So I'm gonna point you back to the chat. And to close out this conversation, this panel tonight, I'm just gonna kick it back to Miss Ellen to close us out and let us know what you think in terms of what challenges we're facing currently.
Well, I've listened and really been thinking about, in particular, the work in Mississippi that we're doing around corporal punishment and overall school brutality and violence, whether that's community violence that seeps over into the school or whatever. Part of a strategy that we're really thinking about is we have to bring the elders. We have to continue to do the intergenerational model, because we have to have those discussions about what has worked in the past in terms of our elders. We know they did what they did to protect us. We're at a different place. Just in terms of talking about our children are buck wild, there's all this violence going on. We've got to talk about that. We've got to unpeel where that all comes from and why is it we continue to carry it versus saying and really protecting our children and saying the violence is out, even in our families. You know, I'm starting with the very young children. I have a 9-month-old running around here. We talk about no hit zones. We don't hit each other. So we've got to, I think, raise up a generation of young people who have not been exposed to violence, both in the homes and or inside school buildings. I think that's one thing. We've got to have these serious conversations in the brown and Black community about violence in our home, whether it's domestic or whatever. That's one challenge. I think, though, that, you know, this work as a local organization, we don't have the capacity to do this work. You know, we're 3 people strong as a staff, and we have young people that helps us to do the work. The national, I see now more of an understanding both from the national and the grassroots community in terms of what you all are doing at the national level affects us here at the local level. So I see more collaboration going on with national groups. I see more respect just in terms of when national groups come, you know, it's not about what we can bring and do for you all. The questions are, what do you need from us? How can we help you with the work? I think this whole movement around, and we early on called it the train, prevention of schoolhouse to jailhouse. We could derail that train because in our mind, it made us easier. When you think about a train, you can flip a train up, you can derail that train. When I thought about a pipeline, that became so overwhelming to me in my mind in terms of doing the work, but I understand it. But this is the other thing with the pipeline. When you cut off part of the pipeline one place, you're going to get some stuff at the other end. So we always have to keep that in mind. But now I think we are looking at school brutality, whether it's policing in school, corporal punishment, seclusion, restraint. It is now, we all understand that. And so we're all working to get those things outside of our schools and create environments inside of school buildings where young people can just be themselves and grow into their authentic selves. And I think that's what, as I, you know, transition from this work, I want to leave young people in place doing this work. We've lost so many young people along the way, even inside this work. And I often think about when we were doing this prevention of schoolhouse to jailhouse work, and we brought a suit against the state of Mississippi because they were abusing our children. Those children never recover from that trauma. We've got to start doing trauma work inside of our communities with our young people, with our families, and with each other. So I guess, as you know, I think about this school to prison pipeline, the prevention of schoolhouse to jailhouse, derailing this train. We have everything we need. We know what we need. We know what our families need. We know where we come from. And that's what we want to bring into this work. We want to bring our authentic selves, our communities. Our communities have never gone to the police to resolve our issues. They came to the elders sit under the trees. The elders went into the praise houses to resolve conflicts. And so that's what I think I see us doing. We're saying, you no longer have the narratives. It's our story, it's our narrative. And we're going to tell it in a way that uplifts our family and uplifts the courage and the trust and building relationships that we know when we work together as a people, as humans, we can accomplish all of this. There will be a time in our history when we won't have to deal with the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline at all. Our young people will say enough. You know, Mary Clive Bethune says, we have a great potential in our young people. In essence, if we just get out of the way, give them what they need, and then step back and be there when they need us. And that's the way I'll end tonight. We're there when they need us. And we got to be there, and we will be there as we've been for 20, 30 years of this work.
Deep appreciation. Yes, I say deep appreciation, admiration for the 4 of you brilliant people, women, being with us tonight, sharing your stories, sharing your successes and your challenges. And I think for me, I always think about themes, and what I heard from all of you all tonight, if I connect it right, is that the importance of our history cannot be undergirded, that historical context is important for us to continue to win. And Miss Ellen has left us with a word of hope, right? If we get out of the way for young people, they will realize the the communities, the schools that they know that they deserve. And so we as the adult allies in the room just have to be there to support them to get that win that we all know we deserve. So I thank you again, deep appreciation, and I'm gonna transition over to Jonathan.
All right, thank you. I'll give it up in the chat and for this powerful panel of the willful and the defiant, sharing their stories around how they have been helping to build the movement, the living movement, to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. We had a special musical guest, but the war on youth is on the rise and our soldiers are out there organizing. So we had Kobe, who was like Brian, but Kobe Murphy from the Philadelphia Student Union, who was gonna perform in just a bit about Kobe. Kobe is probably one of the first youth hip hop stars in our education justice movement. So the link I dropped was to the video that they did around Push Out back in the day when Kobe was a high school student in the Philadelphia Student Union, now as a staff and part of the artistic program there. And sad that we not able to have him perform, but you can check out and then see Kobe and see how much the movement has grown up in just one person. So and with that is going to bring us towards close, I believe. So I think I'm going to bring Kaifiana back on stage with myself, and we are going to close this out. Yes.
Yes, yes. I hope everyone was energized as much as I was tonight. The dialogue, the movement does not end here. You're invited as an individual or an organization to join the People's Think Tank as we continue to serve as a collective strategic base, building knowledge and offering resources to support organizing around education justice. If you're interested, you can find my email in the chat. We were recently awarded a grant by the Spencer Foundation for $375,000, y'all, to study and promote intersectional organizing strategies to strengthen movements for social and educational justice. Can we have applause for that? Yay. We're so excited to take our work to new heights. We're building knowledge, lifting up strategies and successes, creating resources, and serving as a network to share lessons and confront challenges. So stay tuned, watch the space. Better yet, join us in the movement. Thank you all for spending your time with us.
Oh, I think Dolores Terta is with us now.
Yes.
Okay, let's pass it over.
It's Camila and I just want to say to everybody, again, thank you for doing this amazing book. You have put everything in it that we need to know, and you are guiding us on the actions that we need to stop the school to prison pipeline. This book is a godsend for everybody. We want everybody to buy it, share it with your friends, put it on your emails, because everybody has to have this knowledge. If we're going to stop the school to prison pipeline, we know we're the ones that are going to have to do it. And thank you very much for giving us the guidelines and the methods. And if we know that you are our guide in this area, you are our girl in this area, and we want to thank you because you're going to save so many lives of so many young people. So thank you again, Si Se Puede. Thank you for the patience of waiting for me to get on here. Love all of you very much. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And it was so worth waiting for. Thank you for your words, your encouragement, and the call to action to continue our work to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. I believe that we have reached the conclusion of our program. Yes. So you can go ahead and put one hand up in the air and put another hand up in the air. Give yourself a round of applause for the amazing organizing that you are a part of, helping to support, whether you're helping to do the research, interpreting policy, doing legal, helping to fundraise, passing out flyers, getting coffee, bringing the snacks, hugging young folks, beating back principals. All of those pieces add up to our movement to end the school to prison pipeline. And again, move us towards a constant need to be willful and defiant in the face of education injustice and oppression. So again, thank you all for joining us and the People's Think Tank and all the groups that have made up the constellation of organizations that bring this program together. Peace.